Hi everyone, I wanted to make a quick video to walk you through the 4 pieces that are going to be due to your TTESS appraiser next Friday, September 28th. There are 4 different pieces that are due, although many of you probably already have the first 2 pieces done, which are the goals and then the goal setting professional development document. You may want to watch the first part even if you have completed your goals, just to make sure that everything is turned in and that it's also visible to your appraiser. So if you have not yet, you're going to want to log into Strive through Eduforia, which will take you straight to that evaluations page. Many of you are already going to have goals here, but if you don't, what you're going to need to do is go in and add a goal that is tied to one of the TTESS domains. You will want to be relatively specific on your goal, and you do want to make sure that it is a measurable goal. Sometimes we see goals in here that are very vague, like I want to improve my classroom instruction, or I want to improve my classroom management in terms of behavior. So try to make it to where it's something that is quantifiable or that you can provide evidence for. You'll type your goal right in here, and I'm just going to type sample since I'm just doing an example. How will you know if you've accomplished your goal? Here you're going to put kind of what you're hoping for at the end of the goal process. You do need to add an action item, and depending on your goal, those things may look different, so you may want to have a conversation with your appraiser if you're not sure what those action items may look like. You're going to add it to goal. You do want to, you don't necessarily have to set a start date, but the completion date it will ask you to set, and you're going to want to kick it out probably at least till May. Then you'll press save. It will kick you to this next page, which goes in and allows you to edit. You do need to come down here to standards and tag one of the TTESS dimensions that your goal aligns with. I know for a lot of teachers they do one content goal or one instructional goal, and then one managing behavior, classroom culture, or professional goal as well. At this point you can add messages and evidence, but you aren't necessarily required to submit your goal. You'll go ahead and click save and submit for approval, and you'll press OK. From here you're going to close this out, and this is our first goal that we turned in. You will need to turn in 2. The next piece that a lot of people do miss is the goal setting professional development document. So you'll come in and click create evaluation if you haven't yet done so. Now this is a long document, but the only part that has to be filled out at this point in time is just this part 1. And basically this document is a workspace for you to analyze and reflect on your goals and how they work throughout the year. So the first question says, identify the data and processes used to assess students' academic and developmental needs. This does not need to be any sort of giant formal paragraph. It could be bullet points, but it's just asking you to list off how do you go back and look at how your students have done in the past. For a lot of teachers, that's looking at prior STAR data, it's looking at prior grades, speaking with their former teachers. It can really be whatever you'd like it to be, but you just need to list off what that looks like in here. So for our purposes, I might say prior STAR performance. Now the next piece is the teacher side of that, which is how do you identify your professional growth areas. If you've been a teacher before and you've been evaluated through any formal instrument such as TTESS or PDOS, you might say that your TTESS and PDOS kind of give you an idea of professional growth. It might be content specialist feedback, it may be feedback from other appraisers that you've worked with, or conversations with peers. There's really not a wrong answer for you here. So from here you're going to press save and then submit to appraiser. At this point, the first part of what's due next Friday on the 28th is done, which is your goals and your goal setting and professional development document. The next piece that we'll look at from a teacher side is going to be the student learning objective. So the last 2 pieces that are due next Friday, September 28th, are the student learning objective initial skills profile and the student learning objective student growth tracker. That first piece, the initial skills profile, is found in Strive under your student learning objective. So you'll log into Strive if you're not already there, and it will push you back to the evaluations tab, which is where all of your other goals are in addition to your student learning objective. You'll scroll down and it will say submitted, but you can go in and add to that submission so long as you save it. You'll see that part 1 should be complete, where you decided on your content area and then your skill focused or your SLO skill focused statement. This next piece is the second piece, and it's called the initial student skill profile, but for me it's a lot easier to think about it as a beginning of the year skill profile or a beginning of the year rubric. What this piece is it's a rubric that you're going to create for your student learning objective so that you can grade students against this rubric. If you see that right here, you'll go ahead and put in your skill focus statement, and this teacher just put in a brief shortened form for his SLO. It then has descriptors for 5 different types of students: the well above typical student, the above typical student, the typical student, below typical student, and well below typical student. I always suggest that teachers start with a descriptor for their beginning of the year typical student, and then from there you can differentiate students who are more or above typical and below typical after you have kind of that baseline. You'll notice that this teacher's descriptors are not quantitative in nature, and that's a good thing because the student learning objective is not intended to be a second grade book. It's intended to be more of a holistic view of student work and what students are able to do. The other thing that you'll notice is that he has gone in and ranked students at which level. So it says he's got 5 students at the typical level, 5 below, and 3 well below. Now, because he's done that, it tells me that he's already done that student growth tracker, which we'll talk about in just a moment. You as a teacher are free to kind of decide what these descriptors look like, and you can be relatively specific in terms of students' abilities. However, I would not necessarily be so specific in that it prevents you from picking up different pieces of evidence throughout the course of the year. The next piece is who will be included in your SLO. So for this year, you only have to do 1 class for your student learning objective. If it were me, I would probably pick a small or extremely cooperative class just because it's going to make the data collection a lot easier. So you can say my 5th period class, or you can identify the content if you only have that class for 1 period. So this teacher picked AP Chemistry. The last part is, what student work did you use to map students to the initial skill profile? And what this is asking is, what is the first piece of evidence that you're looking at and grading students against using this particular rubric that you've developed? Part B says match your current students to the descriptions in the initial student skill profile. List the total number of students at each level in the box below the description. So this piece is the one piece that is not in Strive, and I've shared it in a couple different places. One, it is in the University Schoolhouse. If you just search my last name, the Student Learning Objective Growth Tracker is there. It's also in your Google Drive. So if you log into Drive, and yours will look a little bit different than mine, and you come in and say SLO Student Growth Tracker, it will come up. Now at this point, if you're really comfortable with Google and you'd like to go in, make a copy, and save it to your own personal drive, you're more than welcome to do so. However, I have had a lot of people run into issues where they've copied it in the wrong place or put it somewhere when they can't find it. So if it were me, I would strongly suggest that you go in, select download as a Microsoft Excel, and then you can save that tracker to your desktop, or if you'd like to upload it into Drive, then you can send it to your appraiser when you're done. It makes it a lot easier for many people to find if you just open it through Excel. So the first thing that I would tell you to do when you open up this Excel document is go ahead and save it, and I would select Save As with my last name included on it. That way when I send it somewhere, everyone knows whose it is. So what this is basically you're going to list off the students in your SLO class. You'll list their name, and then you're also going to list their initial level for that initial student skills profile. So what that means is for next Friday the 28th, you're going to want to have column C done and then D done as well. This is really simple. You'll come in, you'll list student name, and then you'll simply say they are typical, below typical, well below typical, above typical, or well above typical. Now, at this point, once you have this saved, you're done for Friday the 28th. But one thing I did want to point out is that there is an initial ranking, and then there's also an end of the year ranking with 3 progress checks in between. Although I sent out deadlines for those progress checks, they are flexible based on teacher need, but I would caution you to be really careful about that, because you don't want to get yourself into a situation where you're trying to pick up 5 or 6 pieces of evidence towards the end of the year and it not be very meaningful for you. So once you rank these students here and their levels, that is when you'll have an idea of how many students are in each level. And you can go back and enter that here into Strive. How many students are well below typical, below, above, and well above. There's no right or wrong answer for how many students you put into the rubric. It's just based on the abilities of the kids in your class. Once you're done with this rubric, the part 2, and then also mapping your kids to your student growth tracker, you're complete for the 28th. If you have any questions, I would definitely first suggest that you reach out to your appraiser. And if you can't solve it with your appraiser, by all means reach out to me and I'd be happy to help. Thank you.